Mayhem. I'm with the International U.S.-Cuba Normalization Conference and the New York-New Jersey-Cuba Sea Coalition. I'd like to officially call this action to order. This is an example of the kind of movement that we're going to have to build to defeat this horrible, cruel blockade. And that's an example of unity. We have here today representatives of the broad unity of opposition to the U.S. economic and political war against Cuba.
Yes.
This is a Cuba-centered action. Our demands and slogans are ending the blockade, but we are reaching out to all the different struggles that are taking place, and that will be reflected in our program and in the solidarity statements. On issues beyond Cuba, we're proud of the fact that we can bring together people that have different points of view on other issues, but that can unite around Cuba. And that's okay. We're an open movement, we're an inclusive movement, and everybody that supports Cuban sovereignty is welcome. Now, let me thank a few people, and then I'm going to introduce the co-chairs, and we're going to get this rally going. I want to thank that today is also the day of the monthly actions of Puentes de Amor, so we're combining this action for monthly actions that we'll carry on, and we hope to hear a message from our brother Carlos Lasso, the founder of Puentes de Amor, who is currently in Cuba, in Guantanamo, delivering powdered milk and food because of the crisis in Cuba that we're going to talk about today. I want to thank the folks that put the rally together, all the different organizations, too many to name, and a lot of them will be speaking today. The other duty I have before I introduce the co-chairs is more of a sad duty, and that is to recognize the inordinately large number of comrades and brothers and sisters and brothers in the Cuba Solidarity Movement that have passed in the last year. I'm going to name them. I think you all know who they are, and I'm going to just give them in alphabetical order. And please, let's have a presente after each name. So I'm going to start with our dear brother Bill Hill. Our dear sister Joan Gibbs. Our dear brother Marty Goodman. Presente. Our dear brother Martin Stoller. Presente. Our dear brother Ralph Pointer. Presente. Our dear sister Viola Plummer. Presente. Thank you. I also want to recognize a brother who also recently passed, not from the New York, New Jersey area, but it's been an inspiration for all of us in the Cuba Solidarity Movement that want to reach out to the labor movement and to working people, and that is our brother Bill Camp from the California AFL-CIO, who got the California AFL-CIO to pass a resolution against the blockade and to take Cuba off the SSOT list. And we're going to do that in New York and New Jersey as well, the Labor Council. So now, let me introduce the two young fighters that are going to co-chair this great rally that we have today. First, Brother Danny Valdez. He's a member, a leader of the Democratic Socialists of America International Committee, and within that is a leader of the Cuban American Working Group. So Danny, come up. And also our other co-chair is Justine Medina, a veteran activist in New York and all the struggles, in particular a leader and organizer of the struggle of the workers at Amazon in Staten Island to organize. They won the fight to organize a union, and now to get a contract and to represent the workers at Amazon, and also a member of the Cuban American Working Outreach Committee. So we have two young Cuban Americans that are here, and here they are.
Thank you for being here. Which way are we facing? We want to
want us to see our faces? Okay, great. Hi all, thank you all for coming out. We are also, just to let you all know, we're also two co-founders of a new organization, Cuban Americans for Cuba, bringing together Cuban Americans across the political spectrum that want to end the blockade and end the sanctions, and we know that we're the majority, so we're going to build that. So before we get started, we just wanted to give a few remarks each about our own experiences as Cuban Americans. So for myself, I am a union organizer, I'm a communist, and I'm a Cuban American, born and raised in Florida. And those are words that you don't often hear together, right? Trust me, my family finds it strange too. They're not socialists. But Cubans in this country are not and have never been a monolith. I'm here today because the country of my birth, the United States, is strangling the country of my people, Cuba, and it is doing so in my name. Shame indeed. The U.S. government unilaterally cuts off trade from all over the world to Cuba, and they claim to do this because certain Cubans in Florida are asking them to bring so-called American freedom to Cuba. But as a Cuban American raised in an anti-embargo household, as a Cuban who knows Cubans who are liberals, conservatives, socialists, Republican, Democrat, independent, let me tell you that Cubans are not asking for that. That is a lie. Statistics are manufactured, and even more, mob politics combined with decades of trauma is used to silence and even threaten Cubans in America from speaking the truth. Also, that the U.S. can play its own sick geopolitical games, not caring if people starve or die in the process. And this sounds familiar, doesn't it? The U.S. government claims that Cuba is a terrorist state, but only one of these countries is currently funding and helping carry out a genocide in Gaza as we speak. Cuba sends doctors all over the world. The United States sends bombs. So you tell me, which of these countries is run by terrorists? Now more than ever, the working people of the world are facing crises that could tear us apart. We need to come together to build peace, to block fascism, to fight climate change, to end social despair, and to build a new order where workers control their lives. But in order to do that, we need to break through the war machine and the war mentality propaganda in this country. We need to end the blockade. We need to get Cuba off the state-sponsored terrorism list. We need to get aid to Cuba, and we can only do that together by building the mass movement and centering on the real Cuban American voices that want an end to the sanctions. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to hand it over to Danny, my lovely partner.
Give it up for Christine. Hi everybody, my name is Danny Valdez. I'm also Cuban American. I was born in Miami. I was raised in Miami with Cuban American grandparents and parents, with everything that entails. I grew up hearing about a Cuba that was very different than the Cuba that I saw for myself when I went as part of a delegation with the Democratic Socialists of America last year. When I went to Cuba, I was able to reconnect with my roots. I felt immediately at home, and I saw a culture that values solidarity, that values human rights, that values the dignity of each and every person. And yes, the Cuban government is not a symbol of perfection. Name me a government on the planet that is. But we cannot have a complete conversation about the state of Cuba today without highlighting that they are under the boot of a blockade by the most powerful military and economic entity known to man in the history of the planet. This is a tiny island of 11 million people under these sanctions. And there is just no way that we can have a total conversation as Cuban Americans, as activists, as Americans in general, without acknowledging the role that our country is playing in the devastation that is being wrought on Cuba day after day after day. I see what is happening in Gaza and what is happening in Cuba as two tentacles of the same monster. In Gaza, there are bombs now, but there was a blockade before that. And in Cuba, there is a blockade that is starving people, that is plunging people into darkness day after day as their electricity grid fails.
all of that. We can ask the Cuban government to tweak X, Y, or Z policy and criticize the way that they do things if we want to, but we know that the vast majority of the problems that Cuba is facing is because they're under blockade. End of story. And we're here to tell President Biden, you have the power to do something about this. You have the power, just like you do with Israel, to stop suffering. All you have to do is flick your pen and get Cuba off of the state sponsors of terror list. This designation was put on by Trump 9 days before Trump left office in 2021. What is Biden going to do 9 days before he leaves office? Let's ask that question.
Yes.
Biden must remove Cuba from the state sponsors of terror list. This will... Okay, we can do that and tell Biden that he must remove Cuba from the state sponsors of terror list. Let's all say it together. Remove Cuba!
Remove Cuba!
From the state sponsors of terror list. Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow.
Not next month.
Not next month.
Right now.
Right now.
Thank you all very much. I want to bring up next a good friend of mine and who happens to be a state senator here in New York State, a DSA-endorsed state senator, I have to say, and a member of DSA. Let's all welcome Jabari Brisport.